Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Greg Stewart and welcome to my website and watching this video. Obviously this is a video that I'm going to be using for those of you who are couples who are going to be coming in for counseling as a kind of a foundational video to get things rolling, because I give this same spiel every single time I start working with couples. But obviously if you're here and somebody just sent you here to get information from this, welcome. This obviously can be used for anybody to help them in their relationships and or marriages. So I want to just welcome everybody and just thank you for coming. So I use this this material. I've been I've seen over 1,000 couples throughout my career as a pastor and counselor, and use this for both dating couples who want to come in and see if they're ready for the next step of engagement, or if they're engaged couples for premarital counseling, or obviously marriages at any point along the spectrum from 1 to 50 years and beyond. So I want to give this to you and kind of set the foundation for how I approach couples, and hopefully this material will be helpful for you to apply. All right, so what I always do is begin with good old Tinkerbell. So I ask you to kind of imagine yourselves, if you guys went to sleep tonight and Tinkerbell flew in, yes, Tinkerbell, and then sprinkled magical dust all over you, and you guys woke up tomorrow and everything about your relationship was perfect, okay? What would be different about you, okay? Key question. Now, I call this the first pillar because it's really setting the tone of what would be different about you. Obviously, we have all the energy in the world to start processing our spouses, but the focus and the success in couples counseling, marriage counseling, is going to be what would be different about me, not what would be different about my spouse. So if both of you focused on that and worked on that, then we're already off to a great start. I always tell the story that I had this couple one time. It was their first session. Obviously, with the first session, couples are, loaded and ready to go. So right when I finished that question, actually the wife in this case, she leaned forward really quickly and she was ready to answer the question. But when it registered in her mind what I was actually asking, she stopped and paused and kind of sat back on the couch. And when she did that, I just sat there for a few seconds. I said, either one of you can begin. Go ahead. Just answer the question. What would be different about you? And then they sat there for a few more seconds. And I said, now, isn't that funny? If I would have asked you, what would be different about your marriage? What would be different about your spouse? Then each of you could probably wax eloquent for an hour. And when I asked the question, what would be different about you? You're speechless. So therein lies the issue, right? So this is the first pillar of what would be different about you. Now, I frame every relationship, right? So every relationship on earth ever is about two words: safety and pursuit. You might have heard different forms of this, just different synonyms, but I use safety and pursuit. So every relationship, even me and my good friends, like guy friends, we hang out, that every relationship that we develop, friendship, that there has to be safety there, where emotional safety, obviously physical safety, but emotional safety, relational safety, and then also pursuit, right? So if you have a friend and you keep texting this friend and they don't text you back ever, then eventually the relationship's going to fade away because there's only pursuit on one side, okay? So every relationship on earth ever is about safety and pursuit. So what I do is, first and foremost about safety, is I'll have each of you ask, kind of a rhetorical question. I'll say to the husband, do you want her to be safe in your heart? And obviously the answer, yes, of course I do. And I said, that's okay. It's rhetorical. I get it. Then the next question is to the wife, same thing. You want him to be safe in your heart? And she says, well, of course I do. And I said, that's exactly it, because I do that as a rhetorical question because I want to lay that as the foundation. So when we're arguing, we don't feel very safe. But I want you to remember this moment, that both of you in your hearts want the other person to be safe. So your spouse wants you to be safe in the relationship. That's what the whole point is. And another rhetorical question that is not really rhetorical, actually, is I would have you as a husband, let's say I always have the guys go first, ask your wife, do you feel like I'm pursuing your heart, right? So you want to do it now? Don't do it now. Just wait for the first session. Ask, do you feel like I'm pursuing your heart? Sometimes it's that, yeah, generally speaking, yeah, I feel like you're pursuing me. But the follow-up question is actually where it brings it home. So ask your spouse, okay, do you feel like I'm blowing you away with how much I'm pursuing your heart? Oh, well, no, absolutely not, right? Well, hence the reason you're in for marriage counseling. But don't worry, husbands, I have the wives ask you the same question. Ask your husband, do you feel like I'm pursuing your heart? Yeah, generally. Follow-up question, do you feel like I'm blowing you away? Of course not. Now, I do have it sometimes be answered on the first question even, no, absolutely not. I don't feel like you're pursuing me at all. Okay, that can happen. Doesn't matter. That's what you're here for, and I promise to equip you. So that's one thing I can say is I need a commitment from the couples that I promise you to equip you to have a phenomenal marriage, right? So in this process of safety and pursuit, and then we get to brag about, okay? So this is the second pillar, okay? First pillar is what would be different about you, okay? So focus on yourself, not your spouse. Second pillar is ask yourself the question, is my spouse, like right now, is my spouse compelled, motivated, excited to brag about how incredible of a spouse I am, right? Are they compelled to? And it's not that like, no, I brag about my spouse. No, it's not that. You think about your spouse and ask, are they really motivated? Would they say right now, oh my gosh, I've never been loved like this before, okay? So if the answer to that question is no, then it's illegal, like using that term. It is illegal for you to have one complaint about your spouse until you get them to that point, okay? So the two pillars. One is what would be different about you? Focus on yourself. And secondly, it's illegal for me to have one complaint about my spouse until I get them to the point of saying, I've never been loved like this before, okay? Now, rate the state of the relationship. Again, I'll have the guys go first, but I always do kind of a -10 to +10. So -10 would be like divorce, we're ready to break up, end the relationship. 0 is like, well, nothing really bad's happening. Nothing really good's happening. We're just kind of there. We're roommates. And then +10 is like the brag about status. Now, I say +10 is not perfection because people always, I've had couples, individuals say, oh, no marriage is perfect, which gives them an excuse not to improve, frankly. I've seen that enough times. But +10 is not perfect. +10 is when both of you say, and this is the goal, +10 is when both of you say, I literally don't know how our marriage can be any better. Okay? Now, of course, as we grow and mature as people, then our relationship can get better, gets deeper. But right now, it's like, I literally don't know what I can do or what we can do to make our marriage better. That's the goal. And I tell couples, look, my job is that we're not done counseling until both of you get to that point of saying, I don't know how a relationship can be any better. So then -10 to +10, I'd have the man rate the scale. So where do you guys think you're at? You know, and then doesn't matter, even if it's like -8, it's okay, right? Or if it's +3, just what you're rating. And then I have the woman. So basically survey says, you know, and have the woman rate the marriage too. Now, again, I don't care where it's at. The thing I'm worried about is, are you guys on the same page? Are you guys rate the marriage the same way, whether it be +2 or -9, right? So that's the key. Now, there's been a couple couples where I asked this question and I asked the guy and he said, well, I think our marriage is at a +5. And literally both couples, and these are like 10 years apart. And the wife came back and says, actually, I think it's about a -7. If there's a gap that wide, then we got a serious issue here because there's a awareness problem. So I had the men go first because I think, you know, men are the thermostat of the relationship. We try and set the temperature for our marriage, but the wives are actually a thermometer. They tell us how hot or cold it actually is, of course, right? So we're the thermostat and they're the thermometer. So they're the ones that kind of give a warning, and women, bless your hearts, you guys are good at giving warnings if the relationship needs work. But the guy and then is in this pursuit process, but both need to pursue, and that's the key. Okay? So we have the stages of counseling, right? So there's different stages of counseling: effective communication, and then master scheduling the minimum, which I'll get into, and then obviously get to +10, maximizing safety, and master brag about. Now, in this process, so effective communication, because that's where 99% of couples come in, is they need effective communication, okay? So in this process of effective communication, I say that the goal, first and foremost, is to not cause further damage, right? And I have several techniques to do that, which we'll get into. And that's what we're going to hit first is effective communication. And most of this session actually is about having effective communication, because the goal is to stop causing further damage to the relationship, because every couple has topics. That's not the issue, right? We all have topics we need to work through. We all have experiences that certain topics, like, man, we get so tired of talking about it, because every time we talk about the topic, we argue, and then we cause damage by how we're talking to each other, cause hurt. Now we have to have an entire another conversation to recover from how we talk to each other, right? Before we actually get to the topic. So first and foremost, we want to master communication, and then master scheduling the minimum, again, which I'll get to, and then kind of start marching up the number line, okay? So the first goal is to not cause further damage. So this is what I want every couple to work on and practice first. It's called the stop and punt technique. So literally this could be immediate, where you're not causing further damage. I'm a little bit idealistic here, but trust me, it'll work. And I tell couples, look, what I need from you right now is that kind of a three-way verbal agreement, right? In this three-way verbal agreement, I'm asking for a commitment. You've got to use these techniques, right? In my disclosure statement, I've had it there ever since day one of when I became licensed, that successful counseling begins and ends with the client. I don't have the power to change any, but oh boy, I promise you, I will equip you to become effective, whether you're an individual or a couple. I promise to equip you, all right? Whether or not you apply the techniques and how effectively and how disciplined you are, it's going to be in direct correlation to how, well you guys do. The other piece is, as we go through this, I asked for an agreement to use the wording of these skills. Now, there's nothing powerful or magical in the wording of the skills. It's just when you use these the same wording, and don't use synonyms, because I said something like that. Nope, doesn't work. You got to use the exact wording. Why? Because if you don't use the wording, your spouse won't know you're using the skills. Because we need to basically do pattern interruption. This is the big deal. Pattern interruption, because your mental model is rutted, so is mine, and it just keeps throwing out the same thing. Oh, there she goes again, right? But we have to do pattern interruption. So these words will help do that pattern interruption. So stop and punt is one of those processes. So as soon as you start to escalate, right? Because we all know, once we start to escalate, there's a point of no return, right? So once we pass a certain point, oh, it's on, right? It's that hold my beer moment. So once we get past that point, we start causing damage. So the stop and punt, and I give you both permission to do this immediately. Both of you can do this. So you can just say, let's stop right now and punt. But here's the key. The only way this works is if when you punt, you must give a specific time to come back. Because normally in the relationship, opposites attract. So one spouse wants to talk it through right now and just solve it. The other spouse needs time to process it. Normally it's kind of related to extrovert, introvert, but neither here nor there. But normally it's like one person wants to talk and solve it. The other person says, I need time to think. But because the spouse who needs time to think is getting overwhelmed by the emotion of the one who wants to solve it now, but when the one who's getting overwhelmed says, I need time to think, they just kind of put their hand up, and the one who wants to solve it feels like, oh, here we go again. You're just going to kind of, defer and say, well, when can we finish this? And say later. Oh, which means never, right? So both are legitimate. It's based on our temperaments and personality, which we won't get into now, but both are legitimate, right? So you have to solve the problem, but it has to be done in an effective way. So either one of you can say, let's stop and punt right now, because we need to not cause further damage. But when you punt, you must give a specific time. I don't care if it's 15 minutes, 2 hours, tomorrow, or even I tell couples, look, on certain topics, you may not discuss it until you come back into session. Okay. That's the key. So stop and punt. That's the first thing. And then when you come back, you must use the technique of couples dialogue, which I'll explain in a bit. Okay. So just stop and punt. That's the first technique. Okay. Another one that seems to be, that works really well is the are we safe technique. Okay. So to hit safety, to kind of right off of that. So what you do is when you feel like you need to you want to ask a question or make a statement to your spouse that you feel is very legitimate, but again, you're hesitant to because you don't want to trigger them. Okay. And so you resist doing it. So if you feel like this is legitimate, but I don't want to trigger them, just simply say, are we safe right now? Okay. Now, here's this whole slide is going to be wrapped up in those three words, are we safe, right? Because if either of you, either of your spouses ask you, are we safe? What you're going to hear is, okay, it's rational, legitimate. They want me to be safe. They've thought through it. They believe it's a legitimate question. They believe it's a legitimate statement, but they know they're fearful of it triggering me. So yes, we are safe. I promise not to get triggered. All of that is wrapped up in, are we safe? Now, granted, if you do this successfully, like my wife and I have, eventually it'll be like, are we safe right now? Just if it's out of the blue, you're like, oh, okay, go ahead, right? Because you know what's coming, but that's okay. Just, are we safe right now? All right. So, or what you can do is, when you're just talking, going about your day, and then you guys just, something gets sparked and you start to discuss and argue a little bit, either one of you can say and kind of declare over the relationship, look, we are safe right now. It's okay. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be, anxious. We are safe right now. Just let's not be upset. We're safe right now. Okay. So that's one technique. Are we safe? Now, I use the silver bullets because silver bullets are, when it comes to, because it always comes around when we want to have a conversation. Now, for husbands, you've heard this in probably various ways, or hopefully you have, that when our wives are coming and they're frustrated, they're venting, they're just, talking things through, it comes back to absolutely the true statement of happy wife, happy life. And we don't like it. Like, ladies, there's nothing more unsettling in the home when you as a wife or a mom are upset. Just, I don't know what it is, right? But you guys are the centerpiece of security, safety, stability. And when you're upset, we don't like it. So we want to fix it, right? Obviously, that's an issue, though. So you guys don't like being fixed because you either feel controlled, lectured, or whatever the case is. So don't try and fix it. Just simply do this technique of you're blank because of blank. The first blank is the emotion. The second blank is the facts, story, data, whatever the case is, right? So you're frustrated because your mom won't recognize how hard you worked at putting Thanksgiving together, right? So you leave off that opener. So what you're saying is that will be used in couples dialogue, but in normal conversation, it's weird, right? It's kind of, it's just ineffective. So just simply say you're blank because of blank. It's a common, honestly, skill that we use in counseling. You're frustrated, you're excited, you're apprehensive, you're, discouraged, whatever it is because of blank. And then also what you can do is just simply ask questions, right? So just ask questions, open or closed on, yes or no questions, or explain this further, or what are you feeling, and just reflect with them. That's when, because your goal for wives, the goal is for you to, women want to say about their husbands, he gets me. And that's huge for security for them because, wives' needs are basically in security and guys' needs are basically in significance. So when you get them by restating what they're saying, it goes a long way. Now for wives, I call it the 3C technique: compliment, concern, or criticism or complaint, and then commitment. The first two are standard, right? And the first two, we know what's coming. Like, if you say, honey, I want to let you know that I think you are just like such a wonderful worker. You work so hard for the family. And that guy goes, thank you. Okay. Because he knows what's coming. It's okay. So then you do the however, right? And then you go into this, concern, complaint, or criticism, and that's honestly okay, right? It's standard operating procedure. And I tell wives over and over again, yes, ladies, we are this simple. I can't emphasize enough. Yes, we are this simple. Okay. So when we go through this process, you're that third C of commitment. So all you have to do is like say at the end, we'll be okay. So I'm very frustrated. You get this, you do this, and we don't have enough time to have it. But you know what? We'll figure it out. We'll figure out the solution. As long as you do that third C of commitment of, we'll figure it out, or it's okay. Literally, everything else can be washed away. A guy can hear their wives complain for an hour, but as long as you ladies say intermittently or at the end, it's okay. We're fine. We'll figure this out. Then a guy goes, okay, thank you. It's almost like you're petting us. It's like, it's okay. We'll get through this. And yes, I say again, because I am a husband, we are literally that simple, and I'm okay with it. Okay. So guys, just accept it. And ladies, just drop your jaw and say, unbelievable. It's true. Okay. So the silver bullets for each. This one, my wife and I have used over and over again. Are we good? Okay. So when there's that feeling in the air, now she'll even ask me or I'll ask her, but normally it's the guy is sensing something from his wife. She's, got to look and she looks upset. But guys, we blow this all the time because that feeling in there. So basically you go there, something wrong, right? And it just, well, there wasn't, right? Or are you mad at me? Okay, what do you think that's going to trigger? What's your problem? Oh, beautiful. That's another one, right? Now, the worst one I've heard this one husband say is like, are you in a mood? So in one sense, he's sensitive to what his wife is experiencing, but any of those, it just triggers your wife as it should. So just simply say, are we good right now? Because why? It's either the husband or the wife could be just processing something, right? Just thinking about something. It could be you. It doesn't matter. Say, are we good right now? Oh yeah, we're good. I'm just thinking about it. It doesn't even matter. Or even if it is they're processing you, look, we'll talk about it later, right? But I'm processing. Just if you say, are we good right now? Yeah. So that just has, okay, we're good. Move on. And it doesn't spark or trigger the other person. Now, this one, 5-minute retract. So I say when it comes to communication, right? So there's all these effective communication skills, guys. But this one is about recovery. So you will have another major argument, guaranteed, right? Because you're not going to be perfect in using the skills. But if you do have an argument, then everything is focused on, it's all about recovery at this point, okay? So 5-minute retract is literally having to do, let's say, the day after a huge fight, right? When you have a huge fight, we both say just several things that hurt the other person that we later are going to regret. But this one is where you want to take away the words, right? Because what I found is this. There could be 10 or 15 hurtful things said in the argument, but really it's only like 2 or 3 of the words are still stuck in us and they hurt, right? So I have found that these arrows stay stuck in us for weeks, months, guys, even years after this. So what you do is there's a proverb that says life and death are in the power of the tongue. Okay. So when you say things, you call names, like the actual words used, or you say, I wish I'd have never married you, or I want a divorce. Those really hurtful words, just like they're spoken, like even though we know our spouse didn't meet them, they still hurt horribly. So we have to pull those arrows out. So in the 5-minute retract the day after, it is simply this, and I don't care if you have to go back 10 years, anything that's in your spouse's mind. So this one, the ladies go first, right? And just simply say, will you please retract when you said that I'm a terrible mom? All right. And the husband says, you're absolutely right. I should have never said that. I retract it. Will you please? And you ask, will you please forgive me? Ask the question, will you please forgive me? And then the husband say, could you please retract when you called me lazy? Now, you might actually believe that, and but we can have a different discussion using couples dialogue, but the key is that your words spoken, that I'm the laziest man you've ever seen. Yes, I absolutely retract that as I should not have called you that because I want you to be safe. So would you please forgive me? Okay. So this technique is very powerful. It's real short. Will you please retract when you said, and then really simple, yes, I do. Absolutely. Please forgive me. And I can say this one because it's so healing. You could just kind of do these as a popcorn, like just whenever you think of it. Oh, by the way, will you please retract when you said? Now, the key is don't argue over whether or not you said it. Please, by the grace of God, do not, I never said that, because it's a he said, she said. And we'll get to that technique, I think, next. Is there is no way to solve he said, she said. You said this. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. I mean, how are you going to prove it? Seriously, either way, you don't want it in your spouse's mind and heart that you said this. So I simply say, you said this. If I said that, I was wrong. Please forgive me, because I want to pull that out of my wife's mind. I don't want that in there. So do you really think that you arguing and saying, I didn't say that, and your spouse, what spouse is ever going, oh, okay, thanks. Never. On he said, she said stuff, they're going to believe it, right? Or if they don't believe it, like you think it, okay, it doesn't matter. There's no winning on he said, she said. So just simply say, I am sorry that that's in your mind, that I would say that to you. I retract it. Will you please forgive me? Okay. Now, this one, whereas 5-minute retract is more about the words that are spoken, this one is more about how we come across, how things are spoken. Okay. This technique, okay, is the one that you and everybody else will use the most, needs to use the most. It has the greatest return on investment because it's always about come across. This is how you're coming across, right? So underneath this technique, it does assume, remember, like if you don't feel safe, if your furnace gets kicked on, know that, you know what, my spouse down deep wants me to be safe, but I'm not feeling safe. So there must be something else amiss, which means what? Number two is 99.9% of arguments are a result of a misunderstanding. And that's the key. I think there's even research on this. 99.9% of arguments are a result of a misunderstanding. Okay. So in light of the misunderstanding, okay, it's how you make me feel. Now we try and use these all in different ways. Again, it's come across, we say you're coming across this way, or, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking, right? I know what you're feeling. I know why you're doing that. It's like you, like I'm brilliant and I know why you're doing this and I'm going to assume the worst of you, right? So you can't do the whole, we know the I feel statements. So it's kind of like similar to that, but it's true in the sense of when your furnace kicks on. So I put the onus of majority of the weight of the responsibility for solving the misunderstanding on the person whose furnace kicked on. Why? Because a lot of times when your furnace kicks on, your spouse doesn't even know it, right? So you're the one that had your furnace kick on. So it's your responsibility to bring it up. So all you have to do is simply say, listen, this is how I'm receiving you right now, right? So we often say, this is how you're coming across. Or my favorite is, you're making me feel. And what's the sarcastic response to that one? I can't make you feel anything, right? So to avoid all that, just simply say, this is how I'm receiving right now. Because if you say this is how you're coming across, what's going to be provoked? No, I'm not. And number one, again, it just provokes that. But if your spouse says this is how you're coming across, how are you going to prove how you're coming across, really? How are you going to prove that you didn't come across that way? How do you know how you come across? Right? And even if you did, because this also is true, even if you came across and you said it softly and safely, but yet your spouse's furnace still kicked on, then show them grace, because you're coming across like you hate me. Then get that out of their mind, because you follow up with, if I'm coming across that way, I don't mean to. Let me back up and try again. This is what I want to say. So if I'm coming across that way, I don't want you to receive me that way. So let me tell you how I want you to receive me. But the one who has to bring it up is the one whose furnace kicked on. And there's like 3 levels. So this person can be triggered with anything. But level 1 is when you say, this is how I'm receiving you. They think I'm this, this, and this. And the person literally goes, oh my gosh, I wasn't even thinking anything. Matter of fact, I'm in a good mood. And if I'm coming across that way, I don't mean to. Or when we kind of get a little bit irritable, and this is how I'm receiving you, that you think I'm blah, blah, blah. And this one goes, well, yeah, I'm frustrated, but it's not that bad. So if I'm coming across that way, I don't mean to. Or if it's even this one, this is how I'm receiving you, that you think that I'm this, this, and this. And like, well, yeah, the way I'm coming across to you right now is that way. But let me stop. Pattern interruption. Let me stop. If I'm coming across that way, I don't mean to, right? So every single time, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're feeling. These are your motives. This is how you're coming across. Or you're making me feel. I don't care what it is. Whenever your spouse says you and how we're coming across, our intensity or our passivity or avoidance, I don't care what it is we're being accused of, simply say, if I'm coming across that way, I do not mean to. Pattern interruption, okay? Next one is instant validation. So notice the key words instant clarification, instant validation. This one is simply used when our spouse is ticked off us about something and they confront us, okay? And if they're right, own it, right? If they are right, own it, simply. So if they say that, you know what, you should have done, you promised to do this and you didn't do it. Or you punched a hole in the wall, whatever the case is. Hopefully it's not that. And what do we often say? Well, the only reason I did that is because you, which is, we all do it, right? Because we're so irrational when we're upset. So there's a legitimate reason. The only reason I did that is because you. And again, what we do is we get so angry because our spouses confront us on something. And we're just like, can we, kettle, pot, black, something, whatever the saying is, right? So we used to call them, you're a hypocrite, double standard. We always do this. But simply put, if what they just accused you of doing, you did, own it by simply saying, you're right, I did do that, should not have done that, I own it. Wrap it up, okay? Now, if there is because it is true, absolutely, because there's legitimacy where we get frustrated, then that needs to be handled at a different time, though. You can't bring it in here. Like with Christian couples, this is what I've actually had, couples for the entire session, one time after another, say this. This is another form of instant validation. Regardless of what you did or said, Jesus would never respond to you the way I did because it's true. Doesn't matter how Jesus was. Jesus would never say to the Pharisees, well, the only reason I did that is because you. He was, of course, the master responder. But you can say, look, I don't care what you did or said. Jesus would never reply the way you did, or the way I did, and just absolutely own it. Okay? So instant clarification and instant validation. Now, let me get into manipulation, because this is a people use this all the time. So you're manipulating. Okay, now understand, same thing with lying. So lying, you could be wrong, but we get accused of lying. Lying is an intent to deceive. I want to deceive my spouse. Now, of course, we lie to our spouses. But when it comes to manipulation, do you realize that manipulation is like a strategy? It's intentionally lying and misleading your spouse for a period of time. Now, some of you have been in those relationships, get it. But the majority of marriage counseling I do is not like this at all, right? So where it comes from is the reason my response is so childish and horrible is because your response is so childish and horrible. This comes across as not owning it and turning it back on them, right? You're manipulating, right? So keep the topics separate. Don't bring up their failure as an immediate response for them stating your failure, okay? Practice instant validation. If you did something wrong, own it. And don't come across and accuse each other of the manipulation. But we can talk further about that in the session, okay? Now, here's a biggie. Couples dialogue, or we call it empathy dialogue, okay? Now, before we get into this technique, I want to now talk about scheduling the minimum, okay? The reason why is because from the earliest marriage counseling sessions I've ever done, everybody says that, the wives say, husbands say that we don't have enough time together, okay? So early on, I came up with this scheduling the minimum. So our life is like a pie. And here's a major issue for our lives. So all the slices of our pie are areas of our lives, like exercise, hobbies, self-care, work, time with our children, time with our spouses, growth. I mean, there's a million things we need to do. Now, the problem is the majority of those topics in that pie fall underneath the category of the more the better, okay? The more time we spend with our spouse, the better. The more time we spend with our kids, the better. The more self-care we have, the better. The more hobby. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. More time with devotions. They all find, but what we have to do is when we're spending too much time in one of the pie that we sit down and do relax, then we feel guilty. So here's the key. We must schedule the minimum, literally on the schedule. What is the minimum amount of time I need to spend in recovery every day in order to? The same thing with sleep. Same thing with just downtime. Same thing with working out. Same thing, time with our kids. It doesn't matter what it is. It must be scheduled. So scheduling the minimum is a entire life pie technique in order to get our lives balanced. But the key is we're going to start with, at least obviously because it's a marriage counseling, is we're going to start it when it comes to the marriages, okay? So scheduling the minimum is when I have found that there's 5 things that for 20 years, I've given this to every single couple. Again, I've worked with hundreds, over 1,000 couples. And I ask at the end every single time, if you guys practice this as a couple, would you have enough time together and would your relationship thrive? And every couple for 20 years has said yes. So it's 5 things. Now, the first thing is this. It's business time, actually, right? So whether it be Saturday morning, afternoon, Sunday morning, afternoon, a weeknight, doesn't matter. Everybody's schedule is different, right? The key is that you have to go over business items because we fulfill 4 roles with each other as couples: roommates, friends, business partners, and lovers. Okay. So we are roommates, like pick up your underwear. We are friends. And that's a huge piece of this. We are friends. We are business partners. We're building an estate. We're building our family, our kids, our finances, right? So we have to do business stuff, but we have to keep the relationship out of it. We have to keep emotions out of it because we are strategically trying to build our lives. Okay, so this is the agenda. So what I do is suggest like you both get a Google Calendar or something, and you create a recurring appointment and you put this agenda on the calendar. So on the calendar, you go over obviously upcoming events, but what you do is you have to schedule date nights. Okay. And business times, finances, parenting, right? And all the couples dialogue discussions again, which we'll get to, will go right here. Now it frees up date night. So what I found is this, and this is kind of where it began, because what happens is we finally get to go on a date, but because we haven't really touched base at all and we haven't had a chance to talk, we'll go on a date. Oh, this is nice. Oh, hey, I wanted to run by you something, run something by you. And then we start bringing up an issue or some business item, and then we start arguing and it kills date night. Okay. So the goal is to protect date night. All right. So I tell couples that, you know what do we all do? And I know some of you have this really weird beginning relationship. You guys met, then 3 weeks later you're married. Got it. But most couples go through a dating process, right? So we meet. Hi, I'm Greg. Hi, I'm Lisa. And we start dating, and our relationship is like going up like the Dow Jones in a good year. Oh, there's a fight. But eventually we get to marriage. Da, 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 da. Then after that, whoa, right? Everything we did to win our spouse to the altar, we stop doing. So where's the mystery, right? So we have to continue to date. And not only that, we have to, let's date like we did when we were dating. And I always say there's always 3 goals, and I'll quiz you, right? Date night goals: have fun, flirt, and show affection. What did we do back here? What do we see? Our daughter's dating some guy, and man, it doesn't matter where they are. You don't have to go out to dinner, spend money. You don't have to go out to a movie. You can be in the backyard to do a date, right? Do a picnic. Have fun, flirt, show affection. Matter of fact, measure the success of your date by these 3 things. Because no matter where my daughter is, they're like, like we were, is like no matter where they are, they're always going to have fun, flirt, show affection, right? That's the key. So we have to get back to that childlike friendship / being in love with each other. So date night must be protected. If a problem comes up during date time, you say, nope, we're going to punt it. There we go again. We're going to punt it to business time because it's already on the calendar. And eventually, if it's cyclical, like weekly you're going in dates and weekly you're having business time, then all of your problems, like this, the energy of frustration over the business time topics won't fill up because every week you're addressing these things. Calendar, not only calendar, but also with calendar, you do expectations. Hey, we're going over to the Stewarts this week. Can we, leave by midnight? Oh yeah, you're right. Absolutely. So expectations are set before you actually have the event. Hey, Aunt Ruby's coming over for Thanksgiving, right? Look, if she says what she always says, can we just walk away this time instead of arguing? Just set expectations for the event. So calendar, finances, that's a huge topic, of course. We can talk about that in sessions. Parenting, I've got lots of ideas for that. And then couples dialogue, which are those topics that every time you guys go over, you have an argument. All right. Then you get into just the daily. So normally it's like daily connect. So what is daily connect? When you both are home sometime 4, 5, 6 o'clock, everything stops. Just sit on the couch and just, hey, how's your day? How's your day? Right? And then there's a daily deeper connect. Like my wife and I will read a chapter in the Bible and we'll pray, or we'll read a book together. The key is here on the deeper connect. It has to go beyond just roommates. It has to go to, okay, we want to grow together. Okay? We want to grow and grow cluster. It's got to be a deeper connect. So there's a million different ideas there. We can talk about that. And then date night, of course, and then quarterly getaways. Once a quarter, once every 3 months. Get out of Dodge, if it's possible, right? And for a night or two, stay at a hotel, spoil yourselves. Just the 2 of you. Do a beautiful, incredible dinner and get a nice hotel and take the passion to the next level. You know what I'm saying? Right? So quarterly getaway. So daily connect, daily deeper connect, date night, business time, and quarterly getaway. So if you guys did these 5 things, would your relationship continue to thrive? Absolutely. And you're going to say yes because you're not going to be the first couple in 20 years to say no. Okay? All right. Now, when it comes to couples dialogue, so when you do business time, right? I tell couples, try and punt all of these topics to business time, right? No out of the blue couples dialogue. No spontaneous discussions around problems, right? Because unless it's a major emergency, which they're not, save it for business time. Because what happens with spontaneous, even if you try couples dialogue, it just goes south because your spouse isn't ready. So once it's on the agenda, neither one of you can add items to the agenda, and keep items on there and be okay with that item being on there for weeks because it takes time. So you come back to the topic, you only get this far and you say, well, let's talk about this next week. The next week you come back and you get a little bit further, and eventually you'll cross the line of resolution, okay? Now, so here's couples dialogue. To start, all right, so picture it like a V, and the goal of this technique, guys, is not to problem solve. Why? Because if you guys came across a problem you weren't emotional about, you guys are smart people, you just solve it. So the goal of this technique is like a funnel, is to feel heard. So the success of this technique, do you feel heard? That's the goal. That's why you don't have to come back, and why you guys have cycled around at the top of the funnel saying the same things. We've talked about the same thing because you're not getting down here because you don't feel heard by your spouse, right? Right. So to start, one person gets 3 to 5 sentences to begin. Doesn't matter who begins, doesn't matter what the topic is. 3 to 5 sentences to open the discussion. Crucial, right? So as soon as I say you get 3 to 5 sentences, right? Because normally there's one who's a repeater and a rambler, right? I am that person. And the one who's pretty, just cut to the chase. So you only get 3 to 5 sentences. So when I've had couples like, I say, okay, let's practice. In our first session, we can practice this. Then 3 to 5 sentences, the person goes, okay, 3 to 5 sentences. Okay, 1. Okay, it's already working. Because in your mind, you're being much more selective about what you're going to say. So you get 3 to 5 sentences. So blah, 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 blah. Okay, you say 3 to 5 sentences. Now we get into the restatement. The person paraphrases, but this time it's mechanical. So this couple's dialogue is very mechanical. Remember on the silver bullet with the guy, you're blank because of blank? That's just normal conversation. Here, it's very weird. It's very mechanical. It's very disciplined. Why? Because what's the goal? The goal, honestly, is for the two of you to not be yourselves, frankly, right? So it's very strict, very mechanical. So 3 to 5 sentences, and the other person says, so what you're saying is, paraphrase, paraphrase, paraphrase. But here's where this technique rises or falls. Because we know to restate each other, but it always goes south. Why? Because we don't do the second part. You must end with, it's illegal. You'll be arrested if you don't do this. You must end with, am I getting it? Why? Because you have to stop the conversation, say, am I getting it? Because you cannot, it's illegal for you to give a reply back, give your opinion back until your spouse says, yes, you've got it. Okay? So 3 to 5 sentences. So what you're saying is, paraphrase, paraphrase, am I getting it? Yes, you've got it. Now this person gets 3 to 5 to say whatever they want in return. Okay? So they say 3 to 5 sentences and say, well, I think this, and blah, blah, blah. And then this person says, okay, so what you're saying is, paraphrase, 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 am I getting it? So there's other options besides the yes, of course. The most common one is, am I getting it? There's the pause. Yes, we look like this, right? So the pause simply means you got some of it, not all of it. And that's okay, because again, the goal is to feel heard. And it could be the person perfectly. I've had this happen countless times. The person, actually, they did restate what you said very, very well. But then the person says, well, wasn't very clear in how I said it. Bravo. That's okay. Because you might have said you 3 to 5 and this person perfectly restated you, but you didn't say it quite the way you wanted. That's okay. Say it again, Sam. And then you go through this process of, I hope this is recording. So you go through this process of saying 3 to 5, and then the person tries it again. So what you're saying is blah, blah, blah. And then the person goes, yes, now you've got it. The other one could be, obviously, so what you're saying is blah, 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 paraphrase. And the other person says, no, you didn't get it. Doesn't matter. So let's say this person goes, okay, 3 to 5 sentences. So what you're saying is paraphrase, paraphrase. Am I getting it? Yeah, you got it. And they go on for another 3 to 5. It's okay. Let them go. Let them burn their energy off. Let them say another round. Then you do again. So, all right. So what you're saying is paraphrase, paraphrase. Am I getting it? Yeah, you got it. I just get frustrated because, and they go on for another round. It's okay. Let them go. Because the goal is to feel heard. Now, I'd say after round 3, it's like, hey, you said I got you these 3 times. Can I have a turn? Then say, okay, yeah. But it's okay. Let them go and keep doing it because now you're going to march down the funnel. Now, and once couples get down here, then it's like, well, I think we understand each other, right? Now what? Well, that's when we do problem solving. Now, I'm not going to get into this because we'll do this in session, because I just will bring in my experience and all the different techniques on whatever the problem is to help you guys. But the key is to be able to, make sure that we hear each other, right? So couples dialogue on business time, once a week, and try and save it to them, right? But we'll practice this first session. Okay. So problem solving, I'll give this so it's just basically moving forward. So a lot of times couples get tripped up. They say, they go through, well, you came in the door and you looked at me like this, and then you got the dog, and the person says, that's not what happened. It's like we're arguing over the sequence of events. Okay, guys, stop. Don't try and prove the past, right? So all right, let's just say, all right, moving forward, can we do this different? Over and over again. That's not what I said. That's not what I meant. Oh my gosh. So just make a suggestion moving forward. But we'll get into different, there's goal path process where we differentiate the faster you get to, because whenever two people argue, they're fighting for different goals on the same topic. It's kind of like, well, that's fine as long as this. Well, now you have two goals. So what pathway can you accomplish two goals? But again, we'll save that for the session. We'll get into it now. Okay. And the process of expectations, I'm going to save this too, because everything rises and falls on expectations. Unfulfilled expectations of, going through this process is crucial. But again, we're going to save this for session, but I wanted to put it in the PowerPoint. Same thing with transactional analysis and such. Okay. And then we'll get into this stuff in a deeper process. So there's so much more about his needs, her needs, about love language and the like. But I wanted to get this foundation first, because then we'll practice couples dialogue when you guys come in, and then kind of take it from there. So hopefully this is helpful for everybody. The PowerPoint should be kind of right next to my video on the website to help you, and look forward to seeing you in our first session. All right, bless you all. Bye-bye.